morning and welcome to the annual meeting of Rural Employability Network. REN is the European network that promotes the transfer to Spain of innovative actions that foster social and work insertion. And thank you very much for being here with us at this event, and also to all of those who are following us over the streaming through our website. This Congress is entitled Innovation in Rural Employability, Development of Inclusive Communities. We will get to know in detail some of the innovative actions that we were mentioning at the beginning and which have been selected as good practices. They promote employment and rural entrepreneurship, especially amongst vulnerable groups. How? Through social innovation. And to this end, we have gathered here the main public stakeholders and social stakeholders of European, national and regional spheres in order to discover successful experiences that have been implemented over the course of the last few years, but also to talk about future challenges. From Fundacion Santa María la Real, we have fostered this network that was created in 2021 and which encompasses more than 40 entities and social companies. We also are financially supported by the European Social Fund and co-financed by 6 public administrations in Spain. The Regional Administration of Palencia, Government of Castilla-La Mancha, the Public Extremadura Employment Service, the Regional Government of Jaen, the Navarra Service for Employment, and the one for Asturias. The European Social Fund and the public administrations mentioned will be part of the roundtables today that have been organized for this Congress. And also we will have 6 European social entities whose projects have been selected because of their good practices to foster social and labor insertion in the rural areas. Thank you very much for wanting to be here with us and become part of this event. And also thank you very much to the special guests that have joined us here today, representing the European Commission and the Ministry for Environmental Transition and Demographic Challenge. Precisely, from this ministry, we have the Deputy President of Government and Minister for Ecologic Transition and Demographic Challenge, Teresa Rivera Rodriguez. She hasn't been able to join us today, but she wanted to show her support through the following video. Good morning, and thank you very much for allowing me to share these minutes with you over video, because I cannot personally join you today to address all participants directly and all the key stakeholders for something as relevant for our territory as is working for employability in the rural world. I'd like to express a few very important feelings. First, that of the full conviction that we have this possibility in our territory with that chance to create an innovative, engaged and consistent future together with the set of values that must be preserved, but also with all the different actions that we will be able to implement. Secondly, the full availability and will of this ministry to contribute and to facilitate the different decisions that will be essential, because we know that this is a joint and collaborative work, and of course all administrations must be involved, all private stakeholders must be involved, and there's room for anyone who is willing to contribute to the discussion, a discussion that will require perseverance and a capacity to provide support with our full commitment. And thirdly, I'd like to celebrate all the different initiatives that over the years have been put together to support the first approach of workshop schools supported by Fundacion Santa María la Real, and also encompassing very innovative projects, some of which we have been privileged to support from the ministry, like for instance the establishment of our rural field proposal that will draw from our roots, also drawing from a feeling of satisfaction and belonging. And we understand that dynamism is part of the reconnect that needs to happen between the youth and women entrepreneurs, and the reality of an environment that sometimes has been perceived as an abandoned environment, when actually what we want to do is to emotionally reconnect with something that has always been present, which are our own roots. It's very interesting to see how good of a welcome this is enjoying, and how we can build originally very different initiatives, and this is gaining a very good response, not just by local stakeholders but also by urban stakeholders who understand to what extent this is a bidirectional relationship. We from the ministry, we've tried to the best of our knowledge to push an agenda which is not nostalgic, but rather a constructive and participative one that is willing to hear, to listen, to build partenariats and collaborations between very different stakeholders. And it's part of our commitment towards the recovery plan, of which encompasses 130 measures against depopulation. And indeed, it's something that takes on board the different guidelines, concerns that we all have, irrespective of where we live. And it focuses on 4 great fields of actions: guaranteeing decent housing, guaranteeing quality services of all kinds, encompassing basic services, of course, but also those that enhance the quality of life of people, especially the elderly, and also services that allow us to emotionally engage, because we bring culture and interconnection between different cultures closer as part of our national territory. It's an agenda that also focuses on supporting entrepreneurship and diversifying economic activities, because we know that the primary sector that has great power for cattle raising, agribusiness, and agricultural activities, and that's linked to our rural environment, but it's not the only one, and it's possibly not the only one that will contribute significantly to, most significantly, to innovation in an area that must be compelling to the youth, to women, to most people who can perform their activities there. And of course, there is room for connectivity and for mobility, which is part of our plan that encompasses those 130 measures. And all these decisions that are being pushed through the recovery plan, with many resources that oftentimes have been passed on to the regional governments, which activate our imagination when we talk about bioeconomy, complementarity, youth and young entrepreneurship, and connecting women at the territory. They will all draw from your experience, the experience that you've gathered over the 30 years in which you have been performing projects linked to the rural world. But this also sparks a public discussion and interconnections with similar experiences with countries of our environment, knowing that Spain and as well as other areas in Europe will face this as a great challenge, but we are also a country in which we are mobilizing to respond to the present and the future with great energy and great will. Thank you very much to the Minister Rivera for her kind words. And we are now going to begin with our roundtable, the first roundtable, which are European priorities in the social and work inclusion in rural areas. Public stakeholders will talk about the initiatives and challenges presented to insert and include people at risk of exclusion in rural areas. This will be facilitated by the Director General of Fundación Santa María la Real, Álvaro Retortillo Osuna. Whenever you will, please join us on stage.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenos días a todos y a todas. Encantados de poder estar aquí compartiendo en el
Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted here to be at the Congress with you today. For us at Santa María la Real, this is very important for us because we have a rural DNA, and it's also an identity that we approach with a great European spirit. We've been working from this perspective for a very long time, and we consider this to be essential for any social developments that may be done. And it's a great pleasure to have participants like you who can speak to us from the highest levels in public policies. We have Rosa María Díaz, the Deputy representative at the UASE, Francisco Oyales, the Secretary General for Demographic Challenge at the Ministry for Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge, and Roberto Berute, who is member of the European Commissioner's Cabinet of for Agriculture and Rural Development. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the subject matter, and Rosa, because of how close we are, maybe we will address the first question to you, because when we talk about European financing and we talk about all these aspects, we would like to know what the priorities are at the European level, especially with the horizon that we have of the social fund. Actually, the European Commission has always had a great interest in this subject, rural employability in rural areas, the impact of policies. And we've always tried to avoid and mitigate the imbalances that exist between the rural world and cities. As you probably know, the partnership agreement has just been signed between the member state, in this case Spain, and the European Union as regards some European funds, the cohesion funds of FEMPA, ERDF, and others. And through this collaboration agreement, one of the cross-cutting objectives that are set is that of the demographic challenge. And the minister already mentioned it, so I am perhaps going to repeat her words, and she said it better than I could. But this is about having all funds and all funding converge so that it can render the best impact possible on rural work, rural employability. And in order for that to happen, being able to get a job, it's very important, because otherwise the population won't settle and progress won't be possible. So, as you very well know, there are several actions that are financed through the FSE. There's other funds too, but I'm only well acquainted with FSE. And I know that there's other funds that even devote more efforts to this subject matter in particular. But from our perspective, it's very important to make progress in terms of employability in the rural world, and to find methodologies that will enable us to make the people who have the skills get closer to the jobs that are offered in those areas. We're working on pathways, especially aiming at women and the youth, groups that are perhaps a bit more separate from the work environment and who want to live in a rural environment or already live in a rural environment. We are also doing actions with groups of migrants who see a way forward in the rural world. And for the next period, in addition to making progress, we are also going to work on the care network and everything that pertains to it. We will try and allow for the elderly to age in their own towns. And also we want to create a network of jobs that are related with care. And this is a win-win situation. The elderly will be able to age in their own towns, and at the same time we would be creating a series of jobs that would allow the population to settle and for those populations to be maintained, because indeed the elderly will unavoidably disappear and they need to be substituted by young individuals who need to have a professional career in these environments. Thank you, Rosa. And this is very important. It's something new compared to the current program. There's going to be this very specific objective that has to do with care. And this is an element that indeed in rural areas, most importantly, becomes especially relevant. Francisco, in the case of the government, from the government of Spain, from your angle, which are the priorities, the main challenges that are impacting rural areas? Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this session and in this roundtable. Well, there's plenty of challenges, and the challenge is quite big because indeed in Spain demographic challenges are quite extreme. We are possibly one of the countries in Europe that has the most unbalanced situation from the standpoint of territory. 80% of our population lives in 20% of our territory. And indeed, there's a great area of land in which only 5.2 million people live. And therefore, this causes the opportunities in these areas to be quite relevant. We need to have territorial functionality to deliver services to those individuals, and also, in a way, to guarantee the rights that we must enjoy as citizens, because this is a topic that affects the democratic quality of people. We cannot have a two-speed country, one country that has to face up to different difficulties, and another country which is hyper dynamic. And if we could delve deeper and see the granularity of the problem, we could also see that there is a demographic decline there. So the government has applied a shock therapy in a way, as explained by the minister. We are using European funds to try and sort out some of the main issues. And let me set a couple of examples in a second. And these are two challenges that are indeed very relevant, like for instance the digital divide. There's a great gap between the urban and rural areas, and this is a remarkable challenge. And then another challenge has to do with basic aspects that relates to essential services required by the population. There's many more examples, and this year we will be investing the last 4.4 billion in the year 2023, but undoubtedly this is and will be, we're talking about the present here, but these investments require some time. So this is and will be a great challenge. And there's also another pillar, and it's part of the discussion. In the rural area, there is another undergoing change of paradigm. Of course, agribusiness needs to continue to be there, but we need to reinvent ourselves. We need to find new work niches, new opportunities, and they will come hand in hand with innovation and especially new technologies, which will be very supportive. The fact that for the first time in history, physical space is no longer a defining element for workplaces. This is new, and there's new jobs that are stemming from digitalization, also stemming from the environmental transition processes, stemming also from renewable energies and new energy models that are being developed because of the need to tackle climate change. I mean, there is a window of opportunity that's being opened, and the government, and in particular my General Secretariat, is approaching through administrative vehicles, of course, and the official gazette. We also find support so that we can generate that muscle at the territory, and we're working with local administrations and regional governments. For instance, we have launched the territorial cohesion fund. We are also going to allocate 80 million euros for the bioeconomy project. We have already an agreement with regional governments, and we're also creating territorial innovation hubs, which intend to be spaces where we will create a muscle that sometimes local administrations or more rural territories lack, and therefore they also lack important levers that have to do with the different aspects that I mentioned. But if needed later on, I can delve deeper so that I don't take up too much of your time right now. Thank you, Francisco, for actually putting the emphasis on also that pessimism compared to the pessimism that we had in the past. So it's nice that you have put the emphasis on the opportunities, and it's true that through technology, also innovation needs to play a key role in this way forward in this journey. Also, Alberto, from the Social Commission, you were considering the importance that rural development has for Europe. How does this translate into inclusion and employment opportunities? Good morning. everyone. First, I'd like to apologize because I don't think I'm sufficiently fluent in Spanish to deliver my comments in Spanish, so I'll switch to English. But before I do that, I'd like to mention that all individuals who are currently working on rural development are lucky, because the commissioner who sends his regards is someone who holds this topic very dear. His topics that pertain to rural development are very close to his heart. So this is a very important moment now, a moment to accelerate the focus on rural development. I will switch to English now, and I apologize for that.
First point, rural areas are home for something like 137 million people and cover the 80% of all the EU territory, which means that is not a joke, is quite fundamental for the future of Europe. And as I said before, my commissioner and the Commission, I'm happy to be together with the people who is dealing with the social funds, because our idea is that we need to use synergically all the funds together just to give the boost to all Europe and especially to the rural areas. Some rural challenges regarding social inclusion and employment. We are all well aware of the challenges that the rural population face in terms of depopulation and aging, unemployment rate, at risk of poverty or social exclusion rate, insufficient provision of essential and social support services. The rural population particularly at risk include older people, youth and women. The statistical data reveal that rural women are more likely to leave rural areas than men. Their employment and activity rate are lower, although their educational outcomes outperform those of men. In addition, young people are also leaving rural areas to study, find their first job, and explore different opportunities to pursue their career. It's important to underline that the importance of adequate broadband coverage, and we had the clear perception during the pandemic. There was a different speed of capacity to follow the scholarship for young people living in the urban areas compared to the rural areas. And we have to cut as much as we can this gap, because otherwise we could never ever develop the rural areas as we would like to. What are the rural opportunities? What we see as rural opportunities? We see increasing numbers of people who are interested to come and live in the rural areas, including highly educated ones and youth, but only under certain conditions. Like my two colleagues were saying before, we have to cover with broadband and digital access all the rural areas, just to allow people to feel home and to not feel the need to move toward the urban area. And we have to establish the conditions for them to decide, to choose freely where to live, in order to avoid the desertification of the rural areas. We are facing a lot of disasters due to floods, droughts, and not managing of the rural, mountain or peripheral areas. We have to support financially this kind of free decision to remain and to maintain and to manage the rural areas. Otherwise, all the inconvenience that will happen will increase dramatically. As I said before, it is essential that EU and national policies and funds jointly play an important role. We need a robust intersectoral policy approach to address social exclusion and rural unemployment rate, closing the gaps between rural areas and cities by restoring the image of rural areas and by highlighting their key potential for the green and digital transition for the benefit of rural population. We need to keep the rural dimension of policy making high on the agenda if we are to have a truly balanced development of the European Union. For instance, the CAP, also in 2023-2027 period, under shared management with member states, can contribute to close the gaps by, and I'm going to list a number of actions that could be taken in order to close the gap. Developing infrastructure and basic services in villages. Developing local economy and business development in rural areas. Supporting community-led developments related to societal needs. Enhancing targeted support to women and youth in rural areas. And in the specific, you have to point out and you look after the specific objective number 7, attract and sustain young farmers and other new farmers and facilitate sustainable business development in rural areas, and the objective number 8, to promote employment, growth, gender equality, including the participation of women in farming, social inclusion, and local development in rural areas, including which is in our idea quite important, the circular bioeconomy and the sustainable forestry. Last but not least, more widely, we need a robust approach in line with the long-term vision for the EU rural areas adopted in 2021, which looks at all policy domains that impact rural areas, attractiveness, including the opportunities provided in the field of employment, education, innovation, digitalization, mobility, energy, and culture. Those, we think, are the tools, the weapons that EU is putting in place, putting on the table, just to preserve and to implement as much as we can the rural areas. We consider rural areas our bone back to restart the European economy right after the pandemic and unfortunately right after the Ukrainian invasion by the Russian. We have to be able to reduce the supply chain, and we think that one of the manner to reach this result is to implement and to support rural areas in order to close the gaps and to restart a more balanced development on the territories.
Thank you so much, Roberto. I think one of the things that you have pointed out, and I think that is a big challenge, is that it's an issue that affects the whole European Union, not only a single country. Or
with all the differences that Europe has.
Of course.
And personally, I see the difference as a richness that we have to implement.
Thank you so much. Se habla mucho, ¿no?, de empleo verde.
There is a lot of talk about green employment and shared economy and sustainability. Now, what are the challenges that you're approaching to boost these ideas in the European agenda, and what's the role of all these in rural areas?
Two main pillars that Europe is developing, the green pillar and the digital pillar, are the base for all the sectors, all the fields, especially for agriculture. If you think that often agriculture is addressed for the livelihood breeding as a polluter, this is partially true, but it's also true that agriculture is the more green field and sector that Europe and the entire world has, because none, like the farmers, know that the careful regarding the environment is the base for their own activity and their own income. Inside the CAP, all the eco schemes that we put into the programming plan are aimed to enhance all the capacity to, on the one hand, maintain and secure the environment, but on the other two hands or two legs, the economic dimension of sustainability and the social dimension of sustainability. We do not have to forget that sustainability, or better, let me make a digression in a French language. I guess the better definition for sustainability is the French translation, durabilité. There is no better onomatopoeic definition than durabilité. We have to maintain, we have to last our planet as much as we can, as better as we can. So we cannot consider just one leg of the sustainability, specifically and notably the environmental one, but we have to compare and we have to cope together the social one and the economic one. We have some ambitious targets, like stick into the farm-to-fork strategy, like the reduction of pesticides, the use of pesticides, the use of fertilizers, the optimization of the use of water, which is the most important source that we have on this planet, and to better shape and fine-tune the reduction in order to not deprive the production. We had the bad news coming from the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, that we are depending too much from outside Europe in order to obtain primary goods and also the foods. So we have to balance as better as we can the reduction of the use of the chemical components, but on the other hand, we have to guarantee the production of food and healthy food. For this, the new technology, the precision agriculture, is the key. We are implementing something like 100 living labs all over Europe in order to analyze precisely what is the state of play of the earth, of the soil, just to be able to intervene with the addition of the chemical components, but not exaggerating in the use of those, waiting for some alternatives to substitute the chemical components. But I think the mission board on soil health that we are implementing under the umbrella of Horizon Europe is one of the key elements that will allow us to balance and to equilibrate and to reduce and to reach the ambitious targets that Farm to Fork is stuck at the beginning of our mandate. And by the end of the mandate, we are quite confident that we could reach the results that we raised at the beginning of our endeavor and our pathway.
So one big conclusion could be that we have to take care of the environment, not only because we want a better world or we need to be good citizens, but because this is an opportunity for the development
Absolutely.
of Europe and for the future.
Absolutely. And we see this as opportunity, and above all, my commissioner is one of the main sponsors and supporters of this way to be able to reach the goals that we have pointed out at the beginning of our mandate.
Okay. Thank you so much, Roberto. Rosa, volviendo un poco, ¿no?, a la...
Thank you, Roberto. Now, let's go back to the European Social Fund vision. We've been part of the Fight Unemployment Transnational Network. We looked at many projects, and this is one clear example that shows how ideas and initiatives that work should move forward. From your point of view, what innovation projects that you see elsewhere in Europe are needed in Spain or make sense when we talk about rural areas? Well, I'd like to say that this type of event and this type of network is really important to give visibility to everything that's being done. If you look at any type of project, this applies. As I was preparing to answer this question, I realized it's really hard to know what's happening in Europe at this level. However, it is very necessary to have networks such as these and events such as these so that these events become visible. I haven't found anything particularly striking that I think we should use in Spain, but there's a platform of projects and it's called Cohesion Europe. Maybe you're familiar with that. If you log onto that platform, you get visibility into all the projects that are being developed across the countries. If you include rural development, there's only 10 to 12 projects from 2 different countries, Poland and Spain, as if rural development weren't a problem elsewhere. I guess they have the same problem as with oil, that they don't know how to sell it. I don't know. But the truth is that, well, early schooling is the key in Poland, for example. In Spain, there's greater variety, and there's different type of funding, things that have to do with innovation or looking for methodologies to bring the needs closer to the capacities in rural areas. So there are some projects that are linked to software in a network, network platforms or communities to support all of these communities, all of these spaces where there's low density of the population. I've seen some projects in the north of the Nordic countries. The idea of low density is different there, right? The ratio is different. We're talking about projects to support the youth so that they won't leave these areas. So I encourage everybody working in this field to create this type of visibility, because it is really important to make these best practices known at all levels. In any case, I really don't think we're doing a bad job here in Spain. and we might actually have best practices to share, at least from the European Social Fund. If you look at rural development projects, we're doing a fairly good job. You've mentioned something very important, visibility. I'm sure there are amazing projects taking place across the board, but we need to sell them, communicate them. They need to get scale. Europe is really diverse. There are lots of singularities from one country to the next. We need to adapt the projects to the culture, to the people, etc. And I believe that we all play a very important role here. It is a big, big challenge. Now, to wrap up the roundtable, let's talk about the social angle. When we talk about depopulation, unemployment, and rural areas with low population density, what role can you play?
Muy importante, porque yo creo que al final
I think they have a very important role to play because at the end of the day, we are experiencing a complex time right now. Due to several circumstances that Roberto also touched upon before, and that cause everything to be a bit complex in very strategic environments, we had to greatly accelerate so that there could be a change of paradigm in the field of technology and also in the field of food too. And if we pass this on and translate this into the real world, I don't know whether the term is correct, but I was actually thinking of a way to define this, and I was thinking about nano-policies too, or nanopolitics. We talk about large, big European policies and state policies, but to translate it into policies for areas that are 2 hours away from the capital of the province and have 5,000 inhabitants, they consider that this is something from the other world. So we need to work on capillarity, and we need to work on making all these projects which have had great achievements. I'm thinking of for instance, the network of local actions. Well, it's this type of entities that are actually helping build those projects from the bottom up and making them possible. But I think there's still a remaining challenge. We need to accelerate red tape. We need to lighten it. We need to get rid of that complexity that sometimes renders it impossible for small town administrations to have access to these processes. And it's something that you mentioned before. Networks are very important here. We need to create networks of small municipalities, for instance, in mountain range areas, which are remote areas, highly depopulated areas. And in this way, we can try and build strategies made to measure to these territories. And from this perspective, we're working on several forefronts, from the Boost Network, the Territorial Innovation Network, but also through administrative vehicles too. We have just closed the tender for territorial innovation projects, because right now, at this moment of transition, infrastructures are vital, they're essential, especially the most important ones, the ones that bring us closer to digital connectivity and mobility. But in many spheres, the rural world needs to reinvent itself. And this reinvention also requires that we innovate in terms of processes. If we continue to do the same old things, we will obtain equal results. So we need to innovate in terms of processes and procedures. And the different territories also need to determine their future horizons, which are the niches that can help them develop their growth. Something that I really liked was the term durability. The term that the French use, right? This durability also needs to be environmental, but also social and economic, because the problem in rural areas was that people left because they have no way to make a living. So this is the context against which we need to take action, and we need to translate all these aspects into the complex realities that exist there in the real world, and that sometimes lack the necessary muscle to face up to these challenges. And from this perspective, both regional authorities, the general state administration, and Europe with a long-term perspective on the rural world and the strategic pact Well, we all need to factor in and adapt all these measures to that reality. And yes, it's necessary to implement the change. We need to reinvent all these spaces. And to conclude, I'd like to mention that these spaces are absolutely strategic. I think that the territory so far was a bit of an ambiguous term. Things were happening there. For some, it was considered to be an empty space. But if we delve deeper into the idea that is represented by territory in terms of levers that can offer solutions to the great challenges that we have in society, we may talk about energy, climate change, we may talk about food too. I mean, that concept actually refers to the fact that we no longer care about foods come from. I mean, that has changed, and that is key. New strategic sovereignty is essential for all countries and states, and indeed it's something that we must protect and defend. We need to stand for the new, of course, sustainable use of this territory and highlighting the importance that this territory has, because challenges are enormous and we will have no solution without using the perspective of the rural world and its inhabitants too. Thank you very much, Francisco. Just a few headlines that come to mind after listening to this conversation. We are facing up to a challenge, and I like to use the word challenge instead of problem, because challenges also offer opportunities in this case. And another term that comes to mind is complexity. In rural areas, everything is very complex. It touches upon environmental, technological aspects, and many more. And the third point is that in order to face up the challenge, we need several forces to join. We've talked about very many of them, but there's others, and we need a collaboration of very many stakeholders, not just the public administration, not just companies, but also social entities, and ultimately also citizens. And thank you very much for sharing your comments. May I share some information which I consider is quite important.
The next actions that we are going to take will be a single place to access information on the EU rural areas activities under the Rural Vision and the Rural Pact this following month, December. Organization of Rural Pact conference and events between January and February 2023. One-stop shop for collaboration between authorities and stakeholders to share best practices for areas facing population losses. The IT tools developed for this platform could also be used for collaboration on rural pact activities that go beyond the scope rural revitalization platform, and this will be during the spring 2023, and maintain the momentum of EU level access to the level of which EU funds support areas summer 2023. Totally and fully available to provide more information if you need and you would like to.
So thank you so much for the information y muchísimas gracias por compartir y pasamos.
Thank you very much for sharing, and we can now move on to the next panel. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias por todas las aportaciones.
Thank you very much for all these contributions and for everything that has been mentioned, indeed, because rural projects need to have visibility, and of course this applies to many other initiatives that are being implemented in Spain and many other parts of Europe. Now we're going to begin with our second roundtable, and while we allow speakers to come on stage and change the position of tables, I'd like to mention that, as we said in the beginning, more than 40 companies that are already part of the Rural Employability Networks, that indeed it's open to new members. And we are going to see how 6 European entities that are part of the network will participate in this roundtable, in this discussion. They will talk about the projects that have been selected as good practices because of the positive impact that they have on employment and entrepreneurial spirit in the rural sphere, especially including most vulnerable groups. And here in this panel today we have Association A4 from Portugal that focuses on the social and professional insertion of people who have alcohol-related problems, and they do this through agriculture, macrame, and basket building. And also the Grupo Acción Local Visari from Finland, the local action group Visari also implements innovative applications of virtual reality, fostering rural entrepreneurship of young individuals. Also, this is done by TIAPE, that focuses on youth entrepreneurship or youth employment in rural areas, and they will talk to us about the impact that they have had and that they can have in the rest of Europe. We are also going to invite the youth entrepreneurship. We are going to work on youth entrepreneurship through the project a local action group, Pays de Contrus, from Belgium, and we'll discover how they have attracted youth people from rural areas to participate in their test farms initiative. And we will continue talking about farming from Ireland through the Laterum Development Company, connecting family farms in rural areas with societies that they can help people with special needs and foster their social and labor insertion. And the sixth entity that will participate in the roundtable is a Italian organization, Legambiente Eco. Is their very interesting project of circular economy, identifying and engaging local stakeholders in the territory so that they can support the project and it can be settled and become sustainable. We have come to know about these projects on site in the towns where they're developed, and we'd like to take this occasion to thank all the different European entities because they provided a great welcome and they presented in depth their very innovative initiatives. So we'd like to congratulate them for all the work that they have performed and for engaging with the territory. And this is something that has become obvious to us. Without further ado, we can now begin. We are going to allow our panelists to take a seat, and we are about to begin now with our second roundtable, which is entitled Social Innovation for Inclusion in Rural Europe. This will be facilitated by the director of the Rural Employability Network at Fundacion Santa María la Real, Alexis Reutemann. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here with us face to face and also for joining us online. As you can see here, we're going to be talking about good practices in Europe. These are some of the projects with which we have been working in the last 2 years. This round table will take place in English, so you can use your headsets.
All our guests here, we have Joana Brandao from A4 Association in Portugal. We have Desiree Scalia from SIAPE, Italy, and Jean-François Pecheur from Pays de Contrus in Belgium, Brian Smith from Leitrim, Ireland, Päivi Hakaranian, very good, yeah, from Leader Visari, Finland, and Lorenzo Baruca in Legambiente, Italy. So, first of all, I'd like to thanks a lot to it was a pleasure to work together these last 2 years, and you've been really generous sharing your knowledge and your thoughts about your projects, and it's very, as Rosa mentioned, it's really important to disseminate and share all the knowledge that you've been developing in working in rural areas, in social inclusion and in employment. So first question is for Joana. Joana, we've been in Portugal last week visiting your projects, and in your case you work with people with addictions in rural areas. And how did you decide to incorporate agriculture and wicker work into the methodology, and what results have you obtained?
Okay. Thank you so much for the invitation. It was a pleasure to be here to learn and share our experience in the Recolher project. I have to say that the Recolher project is a project financed by Portugal Innovation Social, POIS, Portugal 2020 and the European Union. In relation to your questions, we incorporate the agriculture because it's a typical and a traditional activity in our region. We come from Arouca, that is a district near of Porto, Aveiro, So this is a typical activity in our region. So there is a general knowledge about this practice, and we thought that in this way the participants could arise in a feel of self-efficacy and self-esteem, and could be input for them integrate to the regular project. The weaker work is falling into disuse, and we try to revive this activity as a complementary practice. For example, as you know, in the agriculture we have some seasons that there is less work in the field, and we try to introduce other activity. In relation to the results, we highlight two. First, this practice allows to training and improve personal, social, social and professional skills and competencies. For example, they improve the teamwork, the responsibility, the verbal communication, creativity, they manage better the time, have more initiative, and they are more flexibility and open to change. Second, the sale of these products, because we sell some agricultural products and weaker work products also, allow us to show and evolve the community, and the most important, the valorization, personal and professional, of these people with alcohol problems.
Thank you very much, Joanna. And the next question is for Desiree. We know that youth entrepreneurship is a priority in Europe. And how do you work on this topic focused on rural areas? And what challenges have you encountered in the implementation?
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. And it's very nice to be here and to be able to talk about what we have done in the last year. So basically, in the last year, we have implemented several projects which are connecting rural areas, entrepreneurship, and young people. And we cooperate with European organization, and I have to name STEP, Teen is there, and KIT, Jorgen is sit over there. Together we have implemented 3 projects actually, in which what we do is to try to boost young people sense of initiatives and creativity through idea development and prototyping workshop. In those workshops, which normally last between 3, 4, or 5 days, young people are equipped with skill to find business ideas and to put them in practice. So basically, they start from the need analysis, they discover what are the needs, then they go to the identification of the user, so with user persona or persona mapping, empathy map, and so on. And once they have identified their ideal user, they start to develop the idea and the prototype. And for developing this workshop, we use design thinking methodology. Sometimes we apply also Lego serious play. So basically, they create the prototype, the idea, either with Lego or with some other material. For example, in the last mobility we had in Slovenia, they created their product with wood. And it's interesting to say that we always cooperate with local stakeholders and companies to do those workshops. For example, local stakeholders maybe to identify their needs and to disseminate the product after, and companies, for example, in Go Circular project, in which we apply this methodology to circular economy in 3 specific sectors: furniture, architecture and housing, and agribusiness. So basically the companies were giving example of what they were doing, and after that young people start to think what they could do. And about the challenges, I don't think we have many challenges with young people, because they normally appreciate those workshops. We also work with people with autism disorder through KIT, And actually also for them, it's a challenge to be there because they normally have some kind of relation problems, but at the end they are very open and they learn a lot. They are very happy of the experience. The only challenge that I can mention is maybe the follow-up of project, because you know, you have young people have ideas, but at the end maybe they lack money to develop those ideas. So even if you promote those ideas among local stakeholders or you do crowdfunding campaign, I think it will be necessary to have a link with European Structural Fund, for example. So if you implement an Erasmus project and then you link with Structural Fund, maybe those people, those projects can have a follow-up through additional money.
Thank you very much, Desiree. And I'd like to add that if you want to know more about this project, you have information in our webpage. So you have to enter there, and all the details about the project, you will find it there. So Jean-François, what are the most important aspects of a farm incubator, and how can it promote employment and entrepreneurship in rural areas?
Thank you. Some words about our context. We don't have a problem of depopulation in our rural area. We have a high pressure of urbanization, and the land costs a lot. It means more than 50,000 € for land for culture, for cereal or vegetables. What is a farm incubator? In few words, a farm incubator is a structure that provides free access for young entrepreneurs, free access to land, and also training and advices on organic market gardening or horticulture. For me, there is 3 key elements for a farm incubator. It provides infrastructure, it means fields, it means equipment. So the idea is to provide small plots of land to project leaders who wish to experiment their activity farming in real condition. We also provide access to irrigation system because vegetables doesn't grow without water, greenhouses and common tools like tiller and so on. So the goal is to support business creation in farming sector. It's not a community garden. What kind of projects are supported? I always said we also project in market gardening, organic, and also small project of horticulture. Second key element, it's the partnership. Like you said, it's important to have partnership with local stakeholders. It's a crucial element of incubators. It's always a question of collaboration between different stakeholders. What kind of stakeholders? A public body like a community or another ground owner, training center, agricultural school who can provide project leaders but also materials. Business incubators that provides coaching, advices, access to work, and also local development agency like a LAG. Third key element, networking. The farm incubators, it's not isolated on an island. We are connected to our environment. We are member of a network at national level, but also we are dealing at European level. We are member of an Erasmus project. We are a partner of this project. So to summarize my purpose, the farm incubators have 4 functions: hosting, the project leader at legal, administrative, and financial level, sharing infrastructure, production, coaching on business and technical aspect, and also networking animation. How can it promote employment in rural area? So farm incubators appears as a gateway to start an activity in the agriculture sector. It could be seen as a device to facilitate the installation, the setup in agriculture. And for us, it's the missing link between training and the market. In terms of some numbers, we received 35 application forms and we hosted 26 project leaders on our farm incubators. We started in 2013, yes. And now 15 projects, 15 people have created their own activity, are new farmers. All project leaders that we host are not from family sector in agriculture. They are all, how can I say? They are not from agriculture sector, so they don't have the background. They have the background with training, but not in the family.
Thank you very much. And Brian, do you work also with the farms? We visit your project recently. Could you explain us how your project works and what aspect would you highlight as the most important, especially if we try to replicate a project like yours in Spain?
Thank you very much. The invitation in Irish, but thank you very much. Our project responds, I suppose, to many of the things you've heard here today. Peripherality, decline in agriculture, low population. We operate in an area ourselves about 19, 20 people per square kilometre, very peripheral rural. Declining agriculture, economy, and all of the issues associated with that we've heard here today. So what we've looked at is reorganisation of the resources in that area and responding to policy in agriculture, rural development and health and social care and other social inclusion. And that's where small family farms provide support to people who need it in the community. That can be people with disabilities, recovering from mental ill health, migrants, people who are employed, long-term unemployed, young people who are leaving school early, or school refusing, people coming out of the justice system with addictions, etc. So the farm takes a small number of people in and provides support. The farmer is paid, so there's a business response in multifunctionality to the farmer. So they're doing more than production or looking after the ecology or environment. And the people they support then build their confidence and have different goals. So social farming is a planned support placement on a farm for an individual to achieve their own goals. The goals can be to get back to employment, to build the confidence, to build community connection, to become more social, but they're very varied, and the farm can provide these. There's 3 or 4 elements to it. People reconnect. So they reconnect with themselves, with the environment, with plants and animals, with other people, as in the farm and the small team of people who are there. It provides new opportunities for the person who attends. The focus that we have is on the person and a person-centered approach, whatever their needs are. We've recently had about 250 Ukrainians move to the village where I work. There's about 600 people who live in the village. There's now 250 people living in the hotel, and so that creates a challenge. So everybody has a different reason, and they're now going to one of the local social farms, producing food, learning the language, understanding how the systems operate in Ireland, moving into work, moving into the schools, etc. So everybody has very different reasons for taking part and being part on a social farm, but the farm is the core as well. It provides new opportunities for farmers. The farmers are paid for the time and the cost that they provide. It provides new opportunities for all those people who go out there with disability, rather than very defined little choice. They can choose a different life based on things that interest themselves. So it could be food production, it could be cooking, it can be photography on the farm, it can be the farm skill, because farms are very varied places with a lot happening. It can be very focused on horticulture, big dairy farms, small farms, mixed. So, and it enhances lives. So it enhances the community inclusion. It enhances the lives of the farmers. They're now much more active. Somebody said recently it puts the culture back into agriculture as opposed to business. So it provides new opportunities for the community because farms are connected. Many farms in Ireland, they're they're involved in very different things. So they're going to the store, they're involved in the local economy. Many farmers are involved in community voluntary activities, so people are connected through that as well. So connecting people, new opportunities, and then enhancing lives. So everybody's life is enhanced because of it. So how can that be applied here or anywhere? For instance, care farming and social farming is expanding and developing. We're going to take part in the AIP Agri focus group starting in the new year, along with other people. So the concept is moving and developing and taking shape in different ways. But I think the farmers and people managing the land and tending the land in whatever way, so it's produced in horticulture, forestry, food, managing the soil and the environment, are involved in activity every day in the rural areas. So that can be inclusive, socially, environmentally, and it can allow people to get involved in that and to maybe move away from the focus on their own challenges and become part of something else that's going on. So every rural community has something like that going on. In our case, it's small family farms. And so that can add. So it's an innovation, social innovation, using what's going on to add value to that and to the lives of the people who live in that community and to connect them. And so I think from that perspective, and it can deliver on many of the social policies, many of the rural development policies and actions that we heard about from our speakers here today. So I think the concept can be applied in that way. It can, and it can be tailored, because Europe is a very diverse place with many different challenges. We don't have issues with drought, but we have issues maybe of too much rain and increasing rain, and the decline in agriculture. So we can address those. Equally, you can address the issues of drought and climate change with small, olive producers. Maybe I'm not sure, but so engaging people, because same challenges exist and the same responses can happen because that activity is going on. So I think that may answer the two questions, I hope.
Sure. Thank you very much, Brian. Very interesting. And next question is for Päivi. One of the most innovative aspects of this project is the use of virtual reality. And how do you use this technology to promote an entrepreneurial ecosystem? And what benefit does it have for young people?
Thank you so much. First of all, it's so great to be here. It's my first time in Spain. I'm enjoying a lot. You are so kind people, and you have sun here. We have only darkness in Finland at the moment. So it's great to be here. Thanks for this journey. I'm working in local action group Viisari, and I'm privileged to work with young entrepreneurship to promote that. And in our area, it's very rural area. You said that you have like 19 people, and we have 5. So it's very rural. So we have one vocational college there, and for example, people can study their future technology. So virtual reality, 3D modeling, printing, and editing, and streaming, and so on. And we are buying from young to young. So our project is buying these workshops for the students to other young people. So the students can get the experience that, somebody's really paying for me this skill what I have. And the other students who are studying, for example, in primary school, they can get the idea, I can study these things in our area, and I can really experience these future things in here, in forest also. So I'm really much thrilled about this, and I think you did too when you were in Finland.
Great, thank you very much, Päivi. Last question of the first round is for Lorenzo. Lorenzo, could you explain what is a rehab, how they work, and how they are important to promote circular economy and employment in rural areas?
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the invitation. Before answering your question in 1 minute, I want to start saying thanks to you, to Sarah, to Miguel, to Esther, because for this project. Because like we said in the first part of this morning, we have a great challenge now, and we don't need just money. We need good calls, we need good organization, we need good project, we need a good manager for having a good impact in our area. And this is all the steps that we have to be very careful to do in this. And so you make a great job in this project, and this is the difference between a good way for spending money, for having results, and for having impact. So congratulations. And about RIAB, and we trying to open 15 places in Italy, from the north of Italy to the south of Italy, to connect this aspect that we spoke before, that is social aspect and environmental aspect. 15 places where people can training, can make voluntary, can start circular economy process. The project was called ECO, Circular Economy of Communities, and you make also a very good job with a dossier that we share where you can find all the information about the RIAB with a lot of details that we shared for making possible the creation of new RIAB in all European countries. Two aspects that for us is really important, and then I go across the first round. One that is we create RIAB, not the same RIAB in all 15 places, but we have in every area a map of the potential with the skills in that area. That is a method that we create with the University of Florence that help us to create the right RIAB for the right area in Italy. And the second thing is really important, this challenge to connecting economical, social, and environmental, but we need to be practical to let the people understand which is the challenge and how can they practice circular economy. This is the challenge of the project, and we try to do this in several ways, because if they don't understand the challenge, they can't help to win the challenge. And so this step that we try to do with ECHO, this kind of explanation. Thanks.
Thank you. Joanna, talking about the impacts that your project has, what could you mention in your region and in your country?
Okay. This project has a big impact. We have to say that was more than we expect, mainly in relation to the community. We highlight the innovation of the methodology of this project because we work social problems, but without being assistance perspective. So we engage the participants as agents and actors of the change. Our project allows also to respond to other social problems as domestic violence and children at risk, because that the studies show us that alcohol problems is the reason in the most of them. Other perspective, and the good one, is that we involve the community and develop synergies to build awareness of this problem. So for finish, we think that each country has its own and unique research and activities, as handcrafts, tourism, industry or agriculture, and can to use it to work and empowerment the people. Many times we already have the key to solve some problems, but we have to choose the good one to solve it.
Thank you, Joanna. And Desiree, same question to you. What can you tell us about the impact of your project in your country and in the other countries, because you work in 3 countries?
Yeah, okay. So about the impact, first of all, about young people, which is the main target group. Actually, young people, we receive from them, from all the participants, we always receive positive feedback. Basically, what they say is that they have developed their creativity, their entrepreneurial spirit, but they also feel more confident and they feel more empowered. So basically, they say that after the workshop, they feel they have the power to do what they want. And they are able to achieve what also they want. We are still in touch with them after 3-4 years from the first project, and some of them asked for a follow-up project. Some other told us that thanks to the workshop they were able to find a job, and some other are connected with our organization. They want to become a volunteer for us, so they help us organizing events and so on. And finally, we must say that they are more active in their local community. So normally after the workshop, they want really to do something at local level. So they start to contact companies or municipalities and try to get to be more engaged. And about our organization, the 3 projects help us to develop the network of stakeholders at local level. So we are now in good relationship with youth center, co-working spaces, companies, and we keep on collaborating in new project or in local initiative. And yeah, about the impact that this project can have at European level. Actually, the methodology, this workshop can be applied to different sectors. As we mentioned before, we applied recently this methodology to circular economy and in 3 sectors, but also to different target groups. So not only young people, but also schools or adults and so on. So it can have a nice impact and a high potential of transferability.
Thank you, Desiree. Jean-François, in your case, you have a big challenge in your project because you try to work with young people in the agriculture. So it's a big challenge. So how did you manage to that issue, to resolve that issue, to attract young people working there?
Yeah. My response will be very simple. We achieve to attract them because there is a need. So we identified that some people follow a training, but they want to go a step further, and there were nothing. So that's why we decided to create this missing link, as I said before. This missing link, the reason of it is it facilitates the things for project holders. They are able to tackle some obstacle. Access to land, as I said, it's very expensive in our region. The fear to fail and to lose. So they save money because they have access to infrastructure and so on. And also the fear how to start. I'm alone. They are in a collaborative project. It's not a cooperative, but they can collaborate between different project leaders. They receive advices of different structure. So it helps them to start. And I think that's a way to be attractive for young people. And more practically, we have also a targeted communication strategy. We organize visits of the farm incubator with the training center and their trainees. We have some stand in some events dedicated to farming to present the farm incubator so we can network. We organize presentation of the project in agricultural school or training center. And each year we launch a call to project leader. We have maybe 1 hectare free, and you can maybe we can host 3 new project leaders. That was the case yesterday. We had 3 new project leaders that present us their project, and they were accepted.
Thank you very much. And Brian, we know that you are implementing your project in other countries, and what differences between countries you can share with us? Is mainly in an impact.
Yeah, well, I suppose the systems, the structural systems in agriculture, agricultural production, rural development, health and social care operate differently. So rearranging the resources to apply social care farming in an individual cases and for individuals is quite different. I think the concept allows the impact to be the same regardless of the structures. The challenge that we would see in our area are very different because, say, the health structures and the social care structures are organised differently. So it is complex because you're dealing with, and you have to understand the landscape in health, mental health and disabilities, in employment supports in each area. So that and in agriculture. So it is a complex thing to organise. But I think in terms of what we can do is from projects like this, learning how the different approaches work or don't work, networking with other social care farming providers, which we do. We have set up and established a network of 200 farmers now in Ireland, and we're linking through Erasmus Plus projects and other activities like this with other people in those sectors across Europe. So, and learning for ourselves, but also their learning. And I mean, you saw when you visited Ireland, a small dairy farmer bottling raw milk on his own farm. He had provided support to an individual who you met and is now working in the local cattle mart. That person had an intellectual disability. But it took 3 to 5 years supporting that person to bring them to that point. And the farmer has now employed another person we've worked with to help him to bottle the milk on his farm. So, those people came to us through disability services and social inclusion projects, and they're now in employment. And it's a complex reorganisation through different channels. But I think, I suppose the key would be to understand the landscape across very different areas. And you're linking sectors that don't traditionally, like farming and mental health services. Well, unless there's an issue with the farmer's own mental health. And so you're crossing boundaries of different things, and it happens in different ways in different countries, but the result can be the same. A person can get a job. A person can have a better life. A person can have the life they choose. They can have better health. So I think it applies equally. Once you have somebody that can broker and understand and connect all the various stakeholders, it has great outcomes, no doubt.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian. And Päivi, what difficulties have you encountered in using these new technologies that we mentioned in rural areas, and how you overcome them?
Thank you so much. It's so great to listen to you. I'm so eager to learn more. So best thing to be here is I get so many new friends here. So, but about those obstacles, what we have had, for example, to these virtual reality networks, there ain't so many. While we have quite good connections in Finland in Wi-Fi, also our connections are quite good there, also in rural areas. So, for example, if some young entrepreneur is arranging some workshop in school, almost in forest, there is a good network there. Of course, there's problems with COVID but then there was a practical nurse from this vocational school, and she was within this group who was organizing these virtual reality workshops, and so everything went so smoothly that even schools took us there in the school through the COVID times. So it was very safe to have those workshops there because we have these professionals with us. And of course we were paying about that also, so the nurse get experience there too. So that's one thing. Of course there's always, when we are talking when we are dealing with technique, it can be technical issues, but I think that's life. And that's very important to learn, that you can overcome with those issues also. So we are human and everything can happen and so on, but it's okay.
Thank you very much, Päivi. And last but not least, Lorenzo, we want to know more about the impact of your project. We know that you have a huge impact in these 15 rehabs. Could you tell us more about this impact and what kind of impact could be this project if replicated in other countries?
Okay, thanks. Impact is a hard word. And it's the challenge of the future of every one of us, because every one of us in his organization is speaking about impact and is looking for the solution for putting the numbers in the right way to have something that can calculate la misura of the impact. So we choose for ECHO the social return on investment about ECHO, and we'll have the final result next year, like we said, because we are going to do this with Louis Business School to have numbers that can show how we work in this project. For us, it is a method, maybe not the best, but it's a method that we can use. What we can see now, which effects we saw, and we think that these effects could be possible also in other countries. I put the attention on 3 effects that could be easy to understand, the things we saw in this area. One is that when you connect the green skills also with the person with less opportunity, you find job opportunity easily, because the enterprise are looking not only on circular economy, not just about garbage, but the green skills are transversal with a lot of jobs. So if we work on green skills, it's easy for the people to have job opportunities. And this is what happens here in Italy, and we think also in Europe can happen. The second thing is that you, in the local team of Legambiente that works on the rehab, it was easily to speak and to work with public administration, with local public administration, because you start to join together in practical way, environment and social, and so you start to speak the same language. So you can solve both goals doing this kind of project. This is a solution, a kind of solution, not the best. We have to work on this. I don't want to find an easy solution, but it's a way that can help in this situation. And the third step, and I think we spoke about this also in the first panel, it's really important, the connection between association, public administration, and enterprise. When you start to speak about environment and social, you can connect with enterprise because you start to speak some language that could be understandable. The social responsibility of an enterprise can stand to understand that you're working on social aspects, but also on environmental aspects, and can be good partnership in this way. So we have different local teams that started to work with the enterprise after this kind of connection. We are different. We start from an environmental association, so understand our position. We are 20 years that are studying economic solution for our country about environment, so we are moving to social to try to connect these two words to have solution together. And we hope that this is a route for the impact. Don't forget the numbers. The numbers. We have to find a way to put the numbers, because we don't need just a storytelling of impact, but we need a story doing of impact. So we need to find a way, it's not easy, to put the numbers in our impact reports. Thanks.
Thanks, Lorenzo, and thanks all of you. It's a pleasure to have you here, sharing your knowledge and also sharing the thoughts for new projects and working together in the rural development area and employment in these rural areas. So now we have other panel, the last panel. So thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias. Hemos conocido mucho mejor estas 6 buenas prácticas y sobre todo cómo sería
Thank you very much for sharing with us the 6 good practices and telling us what the impact could be in Spain and other European projects. This innovative project set the stage for the following roundtable, which is entitled Transfer to Spain of Innovative European Practices on Inclusion. Previously, we've heard some European entities talk about their projects and the impact that this has had on rural communities. But now in this next round table, we will have the chance to see how the Spanish public authorities see the possibility of putting this in place in their territories. We will hear from the 6 co-financed public authorities in Rent. They have also visited the different European projects that have been selected as good practices. Together with the Santa Maria la Real team, they have traveled to the specific sites where all these different initiatives have been implemented. And they have also met with those people in charge of implementing them. In a few minutes, we will receive on our stage representatives of the public services of Palencia, Salamanca, Extremadura, Navarra, and Asturias. And they will tell us about the aspects of the different projects that they visited and how they see which are the most transferable and innovative ones for the territories. And of course, we will ask them about the challenges that they consider they could face up or they could have to deal with in the transfer process. The replicability of European initiatives in Spain has been, from the very outset of REN, one of the main indicators to identify and define a project as a good practice. And in the sense, we've taken into account several aspects. One of those aspects has to do with regional problems that they tackle and that most resemble those of our regions in Spain. Mainly those that have to do with the most affected groups in the rural areas for social inclusion and to get unemployment or become entrepreneurs. We're talking about women, young individuals, migrants, refugees, people with some sort of disability, or the elderly. On the other hand, this has allowed for the project to enable collaborations between public and private stakeholders, promoting alliance creation. Also, the positive impact and the great scale on and how this influences the environment. And of course, we must talk about the efficacy of the project. That means that we had to make sure that the results in terms of insertion and entrepreneurship in rural spaces has met the objectives. On the other hand, the sustainability of the initiative must have lasting impact, fostering economic development and social development in the area, helping retain the population, also supporting the financing of these projects. And talking about funding, we must take into account that this must also be able to feed from European funds, national and regional funds too. Yes, please go ahead and take the floor.
So beyond the learning and the possibility to replicate these trips that have taken place over the last few months of 2022, we now see a path to create synergies. There are now meeting points to share experience and knowledge and also create new bonds. And without further ado, we have all the speakers for the roundtable present. Well, we're going to give the floor to public administration so that they can share the floor themselves. Natalia Serrano will be moderating this session. She's the head of employment and social inclusion of the Santa Maria Real Foundation. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and I would also like to thank the institutions that have made the implementation of the project possible. And I would like to thank the speakers here, not just for coming here today, but also for supporting the project from the beginning. When administrations support us, you're very brave, I know, because we come up with some crazy proposals, I know. In this case, we want the administration to support the project and to visit the best practices, and we want administrations to be committed with this project, which, well, you know, this is something that is widespread across Europe and it is hard to solve. We have Ángeles Armisen, chairman of the government in Palencia, Jesus Seco, head of planning and active employment policies in Extremadura, Manuel Vera, deputy director of employment and companies in Jaen, Iñaki Aguinaga, head of orientation in the Navarra Employment Service, Maria Teresa Fernandez, coordinates employment programs in the government of Castilla-La Mancha, and Pilar Valera, manager of the Public Employment Service in Asturias. Thank you very much to all of you for joining. So the first question is, as part of the project, some of you have been able to participate directly in these trips, these journeys, where we have identified best practices. And in other cases, it's been a member of your team attending. Now, after this experience, after analyzing new methodologies in Europe, what is your conclusion? What's been the most striking? What do you think can be scaled? What have you learned that you would apply to your administrations and responsibilities? Ángeles Armisen, please, you can take the floor. Thank you very much for inviting us. I would like to thank you for this type of initiative for two reasons. First, because of this European calling of this network, and not just because of the EU funding. If Europe wants to bond regions and individuals, the network is clearly one very good way to do that. A person from my team made the trip that has been mentioned. Based on what I have shared or discussed with Adrián, I would say that these problems are borderless, but so are solutions, and therefore we need to adapt the solutions to the local field. And of course, the cultural, legal complexities in each country need to be taken into account. However, the truth is that when we talk about the demographic challenge, everybody was talking about population per square kilometer. Well, when we talk about the demographic challenge, there are three key elements that are essential: housing, employment, and these three challenges have no borders or social or administrative borders. Out of all the experiences that I've heard, and that's why I wanted to join the table, I would say that they've talked about integration, community, the disenfranchised from different points of view. So sometimes the lack of equality is directly linked to the region, the demographics, the depopulation. Some other times it's due to the economic situation or the social situation. I would contribute 2 points. First, we are experiencing a new social revolution driven by transportation and technology. This new revolution, I'm not talking about AI because everybody thinks that's the end game. No, I'm talking about collective intelligence in these territories. And collaboration will be the key for that. These projects I have approached will start from that intelligence in those in those regions, boosted by these initiatives we've listened to. And I would have loved to travel the way Adrián traveled. Of course, I didn't have the time to do so, but it's been a great experience for him. Congratulations. And I think we're learning a lot from each other thanks to this, and that is going to help us tackle the challenges ahead. Angeles has talked about collective intelligence as one of the applications we can use regionally. In Extremadura, Jesus, you have a priority. Given the features of the land, well, in your case, you've gone through all of these experiences already, right? So in your case, what are the elements, the pieces of projects, methodologies, or ideas that you think are more easily transferred or are more innovative? Well, I'd like to thank you for this project. And thank you very much for helping us contribute. And then I'd like to thank the different institutions who have welcomed us in the countries. They've been so generous with their data and communicating with us. We had Marcos from the evaluation service. He visited 6 countries and he relates a very interesting experience. So, following the previous talk, I'd like to mention what are the most relevant innovation elements. Regarding the Belgian model, the idea of the social farm is really interesting. This is being done in some regions in Spain already, in urban areas. The access to land is really, really a big problem, very relevant. Regarding the eco project, the rehab idea is great. You've talked about inclusive training and volunteers. You bring to the table very interesting angles. And then the Milano project. We love the startup part. What's our identity in Extremadura? Well, there are 1 million inhabitants, low density similar to Finland's. We have 80,000 freelancers, meaning that most of the people in Extremadura have created their own jobs, let's say. And then out of the 200,000 workers, 80,000 are freelancing. So it is really important to support the youth and make sure that their businesses have greater capillarity. So we do enjoy that part. And then the project in Finland, we absolutely loved that. This morning, Francisco talked about the social angle, how important it is to create a community. Acatono is music to our ears, the way the municipality can take decisions in the private and public sector. So when we need to develop a project strategy in the public sector, we liaise with social agents, trade unions and industry-wide organizations. The beauty of your project is that the municipal authorities discuss about the business structure, what would be the ideal structure. That was amazing. To do this at a local level, and let's say an assembly of children or elderly, asking them, am I going to do the park here or there? That's everything we've done here. But you've taken a step further. The municipality as a business, that is very relevant. And then what you mentioned this morning, Paco, the local population must engage with the project if you want it to be successful. Regarding Yolanda's project, your idiosyncrasy is key for us. The tandem between the farms and people with disabilities or coming from vulnerable groups, that is key. We've tried this in the past. And finally, the Portuguese project. Well, it is a tall ticket. We're talking about substance abuse, substance users, and that holistic approach, engaging with the entire community, healthcare, the neighbors. I would say that's the secret ingredient to be successful, right? You've said that there is an important group of women that abuse alcohol. Well, facing that is really the secret, right? Engaging everyone in society has been key. I went over time, didn't I? Yes, but that's okay. Thank you very much. That engagement with the project leads you to this analysis, I understand, so thank you very much. And then next, Pilar. Jesus has identified each of the projects. Now, in particular or in general, what matters do you think are more relevant? Where do you see greater ability to innovate? Good morning, it's been a pleasure to greet you today, and hello to all of you connected remote. I know it was hard to be here in present. In Asturias, what's our take on this visit? Well, we couldn't be part of these visits, but we've received a lot of information. In any case, we've learned several lessons. First, collaborative work, the experiences. We always work in a network, at training centers, social agents and municipalities. You were asking about the role of social entities. Well, leadership comes from an institution always. Then it's always supported by an administration or a city council, but definitely an institution leads. So we need to work in a network with social economic agents, the administrations and the training centers, and we need to work in collaboration all together. Now, another lesson for us is that these are long-term experiences. They take long years. Nothing changes overnight. Building trust in a territory needs time. This is not a fashion. This is not a campaign. Lorenzo talked about this from Italy. Speaking the same language requires a lot of work. And then the maturity of each personal project takes time as well. We work with entrepreneurs across all projects, and I would say each personal project requires no less than 3 years of work with an organization, and it requires physical space. We've all seen it. Using abandoned space, using land. It always requires a physical element, co-working space, but it does. And then learning from the peers. This is really important because it is reflected in the challenges. How can we engage people with a lot of expertise with the newbies? So the peer methodology, we've seen this in Belgium basically, but in other experiences as well. That hands-on learning. And then the role of vocational training, it's always there. It's always needed. Some sort of degree is always needed for a job. So we're always going to need training centers. And finally, making the most of the potential in a territory. We've made the point of basket weaving earlier, but also working the land. Practical, hands-on learning, starting from our strengths. So these are the learnings for Asturias. Thank you very much, Pilar. Pilar has touched upon a key point, which is adapting things to the territory and to the land and to its circumstances. In your case, Iñaki, given the peculiarities of your land, what are the most innovative elements that you've identified? Well, thank you for that question, and good morning. It's an honor to participate in this Congress. I would like to congratulate everyone. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences in Europe. So, in Navarra, we've seen, well, very different issues. I don't want to take a lot of time because I would be repeating over what my colleagues have said. Virtual reality, for example, applied to entrepreneurship in Finland, that has been, well, we're in awe with that one. The circular economy as well, social inclusion, through the experience in Ireland and in Portugal. And then I would like to highlight one point, one project that I think is closer to our situation in Navarra. I'm talking about Belgium, the project from Belgium. In a way, they are enabling free access to plots to those young people who want to be entrepreneurs and work in the primary industry.
This is very important in the primary industry because depopulation also stems because of the decay of the primary industry. And something that I've learned is that employment is normally an aspect that evolves very quickly. What is a source of employment now could be obsolete tomorrow, and applying this concept to the primary industry is quite a challenge. It poses a great challenge. It is a great challenge to revitalize this industry, to re-professionalize it, and at the end of the day, it's a challenge to provide opportunities and answers to the needs of many individuals. But because let us not forget that no matter how much we want to come up with projects to combat the abandonment of these areas, what we need to do is to think of economic answers, economic responses. We need to provide solutions so that these people can implement their vital projects and at the same time fight depopulation. I thought it was very interesting to listen to the approach to access to land, but also the support provided to all these individuals because of everything that it entails in terms of quality of life, in terms of reapproaching the primary sector from the angle of ecology, closeness, and at the end of the day, fostering what we have come to call kilometer zero economy. But all this would be to no avail, and perhaps this is the impact that I found most impacting. If it weren't for all the synergies that they have managed to put in place. Here we're talking about the City Council of Morel, who provided the land for free to individuals. We're talking about the training center that was providing support for the young entrepreneurs. Also, Career Job, that was an entity that provided support in terms of self-employment. We're talking about universities here. We're talking about many things, many stakeholders. Only in this way can we understand the successes of this success. A bio-canteen, a shop, a market, a social vegetable farm, and precisely all the synergies give rise to snowball effect because synergies continue to grow, and as we actually managed to see there at NODAB, Actually, the next project is that at a neighboring city, they were going to use a mall that had been abandoned to create a co-working space amongst other things. They were also going to create a point of sale that has a broader scope than before. And indeed, by just combining these aspects, we can see how answers can be provided, how opportunities can be created for social and labor insertion, while also fighting against the risk of depopulation that they have in those territories. Teresa, Iñaki was pointing at one of the proposals that he considered to be more replicable or adaptable to the territory of Navarra. So in your case, there's many projects that you thought could be scalable, that you thought could be most innovative for your context. Yes, I've actually visited a project, and I'd like to thank, on behalf of my region and on behalf of the authorities, I'd like to thank you for inviting us to visit this project. So I actually participated in the first one, the one that went to Rome and Naples, and I work in employment in my region, and I was trying to get a hold of ideas that could help me with my responsibilities. My region is that of Castilla-La Mancha. It's very rural, and it's not an exemption. It's not something isolated. It's a good example of what's happening in my territory. And what I observed in the project that I participated in Naples and Rome. This is also something that I've heard from other colleagues when talking about the rest of projects. What I saw, I think, can be extrapolated to my region. There's policies that are all-encompassing, that are being put in place in the different territories that have been visited. Our region is a highly depopulated one. There's the provinces, Cuenca and Guadalajara, which are chiefly rural, and they're very much depopulated. And actually, we were the pioneers in the depopulation policies in Spain, and I dare say also in Europe. So we're trying to put the emphasis on this project, on this problem. We are trying to also tackle this from the standpoint that has been mentioned by Jesus. I actually echo everything that Jesus mentioned. And we are using all the learnings that we've drawn from our visits, from the different projects in the different regional ministries in our field of action. We're trying to extrapolate those good experiences and good practices in all the different tenders as a consequence of the regulations that I referenced before. We are trying to include measures to try and reduce rurality rates so we can attract population to come and live in our territory using the assessment criteria that are part of the relevant law. We are trying to increase subsidies for those rural areas that are very depopulated, and we are also implementing specific programs. And these programs, in a way, actually mirror what we have seen in these territories. We have 2 programs to attract young talent. One of them is already underway, and it is being successful, more or less, but now indeed it is rendering the results after 2 years, and we are getting a hold of our young talent that moved to Europe. We're trying to get them to get back to the region. And we're not just targeting other countries, also we're trying to target the national territory. We're trying to get them to move back to our region. And there's also actually another project that we're currently working on, and it's a youth talent acquisition program that aims at getting the young individuals that left rural environments to move to the province's capitals. We're trying to get them to move back to their towns, to move back to their territories, so that these towns can also experience the improve in quality of life that could stem from the return. This helps us rejuvenate the population and also has economic advantages. Thank you very much for allowing us to partake in this project, and thanks for all the good experiences that will help us implement policies in this sense in the future. Thank you very much, Teresa. Manuel, in your case, just like Teresa, you participated in some of the visits. So what was most impacting to you? What was most striking? What do you think can be replicated in your region? Well, first, as the previous speakers, I'd like to echo the gratitude expressed, especially to Miguel Ángel and Xavi. They've done a great job. And in general, I'd also like to thank the Foundation and our hosts, from Paivi's eternal smile and look. You've all been very welcome, and thank you very much. As was mentioned before, indeed, the projects that we visited are very interesting, but at the same time, they are projects that in a way we've seen in Spain over the last 20 years with their different features and peculiarities. Adapting these projects to the province of Jaen, which is a vast province with a lot of olive trees and natural parks. Because of our peculiarities, there are some projects that could be more applicable than others. But something that really struck me was the capillarity of these projects across the territories, because there's a very strong presence of private social entities, and that's something that we lack. And we're talking about private social entities that indeed have a link with the public sphere, but they have an amazing technical capacity. And that's something that we miss in our territory, because in our territory we lack stakeholders that know how to put in place the different policies, the regional, local policies, or even European policies. So in my province, that's something that I wish we had. There need to be more entities that are technically enabled to put these projects in place. And as you know, the regional ministry cannot do everything. We cannot be in every single battlefront. So we need stakeholders that can implement policies like the ones that have been discussed as part of this project. And in 2023, hopefully, we will be able to put the finger on some projects that are implementable for us. Well, thank you, José Manuel. I'm going to ask you the last question. You were last in the previous round, but now you will be first. And this takes me back to the beginning. Sometimes it's very difficult to escalate these practices because of the idiosyncrasy of the territory or because of the specific particularities of rural territories, which differ, of course. So what are the main challenges that you have to deal with when trying to escalate these practices? And let us not just talk about challenges. What could be the solution? What could help you escalate this type of practices in your territory? Well, we need to engage people that live in rural areas with these practices, with these projects. So we need to engage them from the technical and personal perspective. And we need to engage with the municipal stakeholders so that there's no one telling them what to do. That's not the way we should go about it. Fortunately, in our municipalities, we do have young individuals who are skilled and who can take the steps. Maybe they need additional additional trainings and adaptations in order to do so. But sometimes we say, Teresa's son is implementing this approach or that approach. And that's the kind of thing that happens in municipalities that have 1,100 inhabitants or so. So approaching with care the population that is going to be at the center of the intervention is key. And also we need to know what we're getting ourselves into, because in rural environments, seasonality of work is very important. For the olive trees, it lasts for months, and there's agricultural tasks that are also very seasonal, and also gender. The engagement of women is a very important factor in the rural area, because we are not managing to create the link with the labor market. Men are approaching it from a different perspective, I think. But this needs to be analyzed on a case-by-case basis. But we always need to show great respect for the rural environment where we work. Thank you very much, José Manuel. Ángeles, you were nodding when José Manuel was speaking, so I guess you very much agreed with what he was expressing. What are the challenges that you identify for Palencia? What can help you solve them so that these initiatives can be escalated? Well, I think there's very many shared challenges, because we are in regions which are very large. Our province is more than 8,000 square kilometers. And just for you to get an idea, this means that the region of Madrid or the Basque Country could be fit into my province in terms of territory. This is a very powerful image. We have 160,000 inhabitants between the capital and the province, and 60% of them live at the capital. So there would be many points that make us similar, but I think we have also very similar challenges. For me, there's a demographic challenge, but one of the most important challenges is that of the mindset of population at the territory. They need to know that initiatives in their territory are successful, and that there's initiatives that will be successful at the territory, in their area, in their municipality. But regardless of this, they oftentimes look at other provinces or other regions. They think, in Navarra they're being so successful in implementing this. And they don't realize that we have the necessary elements and we have the necessary possibilities and powers to make it. And these initiatives can range from the smallest and more integrative ones to the most ambitious ones. And in Palencia, a few years ago, in a municipality close to the capital, they built the Renault factory there. And now we are a reference at the worldwide level for hybrids too. And the presentation of the hybrid was done back in the day there. And before this, we were very rural. So this was a giant leap for the area. This was a very ambitious initiative, but we must also mention that activities that have to do with traditional activities can also be very successful, because sometimes you live at the municipality and the restaurant where people go and eat is very well known, and that is very important too. It could be a family business, but it can help you build links with a specific product too. And I think we need to work on that pillar, that of mindset. Because if in a rural population they manage to be at the center, because the administration must support that, but if they manage to be at the center of an initiative, we won't steal the thunder from them at the administration level. And the second problem might be that of the demographic challenge. And that is indeed essential for young individuals to not join that important movement of urban concentration. In Spain, now 80% of the population lives in 20% of the territory, and most of them live in cities like Madrid or Barcelona, but the remainder of them live near the coast. And I'm going to say something obvious. Being here in Madrid, we always talk about empty Spain, which is a term that I don't mean to own, but I think we can talk about crowded Spain. there's a part of Spain that is crowded, that is over-consuming resources of all kinds constantly, and managing that. I mean, every time I come to Madrid and I hop in the metro at 8, I feel the need to take a picture and say, here I am in overcrowded Spain. And this is indeed something that has many implications in terms of economic resources. And when we approach the demographic challenge, we also need to bear in mind that we are complementary. Never before has the urban environment needed the values and the contributions of the rural environment. And when talking about the demographic challenge and talking about the mindset, I also need to talk about an idea that I'm very much a believer of. We have never before spoken so much about climate change, nature, the environment. Never before, and the commissioner is here, by the way, never before have green policies been so much at the center, and never before have so much generations wanted to concentrate on these aspects. So we mustn't just speak. This trend, which was just blooming, at least in my province, after the pandemic, it has regained its key role, and it's very important that the challenge is not just to talk about this, but actually to regain the balance. And finally, and I don't want to be too long-winded because I'm actually speaking about this from a full conviction, and I'd like to talk about productive models. I'm going to use the example of Palencia, with a cooperative of more than 8,000 members, with vertical collaborations too. And very recently, 7 days ago, it got an award by Agropal because it's created 500 jobs. And they have farmers, cattle breeders, and they are commercializing and distributing their products. And I think this is a great example in our province. And of course, this is a key reference, this cooperative in our province. And this shall spark a change in governance, which is something that we have been discussing. All of us have mentioned it. And we must have collaborative engagement with a public-private collaboration, and with the implication of the third sector, which is essential and sometimes lack the power that I'd love for it to have. And I oftentimes mention Santa María la Real, which has a very strong origin and also has an origin in Palencia. And I was very jealous of the representative of Finland when she said that across all their territories and in all towns, they have Wi-Fi of high quality and capacity.
Permite no solo conectar territorios.
That Wi-Fi enables connections across the land and people, and of course we need our people to be connected too. Thank you. Teresa, what about Castilla-La Mancha? You've mentioned how several matters have been identified already. What challenges do you find when you consider scaling these projects more specifically? And what do you think are the solutions to face these challenges? Well, there is a very important key, which is to engage the target audience. This is for how can you do that, right? Well, our next generation funds and policies are being implemented now, and our feeling is that it's more of the same. Of course, we don't want this to be so, but that's what the targeted communities feel. So getting the message across, making sure that they know we want them to be part of the demographic challenge and get excited about it and all that. That is absolutely essential. And yes, I agree with your comments fully. Now, this shows how difficult it is to create these programs. Is everything already created? No, not really. But we do need to face the situation and find synergies in the land. I believe that is the biggest challenge that we have. And of course, we need social agents and the civil society to engage. You know that if you keep doing the same, you're going to get the same result. After the pandemic, in the wake of the pandemic, we now see an opportunity to leverage new technologies, take Wi-Fi technology to rural areas so that new work methods can be leveraged in rural areas too. Make the most of them and make sure that we get them across. So that excitement, that change of mindset is absolutely key. That's something new, and yeah, that is definitely the message that we should convey. Thank you, Teresa. In your case, Jesus, Teresa was talking about convincing so that more people will get on board. We've talked about opportunities to tackle unemployment in rural areas, for example. What challenges do you find that are different? Some challenges are shared, but what do you think is key to face the challenges? Well, it's just so hard not to agree with Manuel and Teresa earlier. I am fully aligned with their comments, and I would go a little bit beyond, in fact, as part of this analysis. People are entitled to die wherever they want to. If we live in a rural area, we don't want to go to the city for that, and for that purpose, these type of challenge is absolutely essential, and there is a common thread across the project: working in a network, the relevance of social local groups, the relevance of the third sector. The administration, as Manuel said, can only go so far, and if you want to go further, you need to partner up with AUPEX or Fundación Santa Maria or other institutions and communities that know what needs to be done. We believe this type of alliance is absolutely essential. We were talking about working in a network this morning, so it's more of the same. We talk about horizontal models, and verticality is not present. We talk about nodes, communication in a network. We talk about spaces that flow, bimodal communications, and that's how we understand governance models to be. It is the only way. We are what we are, 1 million inhabitants, one city with 100,000, and yes, we are getting the Wi-Fi, we're getting optic fiber. Sometimes we don't have a bar in a little town, or the healthcare center has shortages, or let's say people need to go to school in the next town. This type of thing is absolutely essential. If we cannot set these challenges, what are we good for? If we want our kids to live in little towns with us, well, they need to take English lessons. They want to play paddle, or they need to learn the piano, and there are no services. And that is the big challenge, really. I can have 4G, 5G in a little town with 100 inhabitants. And yes, of course, and I can become appealing for post-pandemic for people from Madrid that have this romantic vision of the countryside, and they want to come see how geckos live or daisies bloom. But services are key, and if I cannot bring services to my region, what is the point of it all? Angeles has talked about this too. There is it is increasingly man-led. Women left a long time ago, and of course women bring life. They bear children. If you look at our indicators, our little towns are have more men than women, and if we cannot engage with women and keep them in the countryside, then we're not going to win this battle. Thank you, Jesus. Iñaki, you've identified a practice that fits very well with your identity. So if you think about scaling this practice, what challenges do you see? What do you think is needed for this not to exist? So what we would like is quite easy, right? Now it's a matter of reality. There are difficulties and challenges. Let's talk about challenges rather. There are several challenges. I would focus on 3. I come from Navarra, from a rural area. It's a beautiful region, by the way. And there is great diversity. Many people, most people live in urban areas, and there's rural areas too. And then there are some regions in Navarra that are suffering that depopulation. I'm talking about the Pyrenees, and then mountain areas, and lower down as well. I would identify 3 potential challenges that are absolutely essential beyond what we've talked about here. I echo the words of my colleagues. This is so, it is true. Now, these challenges are the following. Access to the land, that's one challenge. The profile of people we might want to address, and the synergies needed to make this work. Now, interestingly, we live the population of the world is increasing, even though rural areas are depopulating, and the land is increasingly more expensive. I think one potential solution would be to accept, understand, and have local entities participate, particularly in Navarra and these regions I mentioned. There's a large percentage of common land in Navarra, so when there is a will, there is a way. Another important point is the profile of people. So the level, the training was quite high, and they had a business eye, and I said, how can we replicate this in Navarra? We really don't have the same profile, and the level of training is not the same. We've had some conversations with an agronomist engineer, and the truth is that, well, I normally don't have engineers looking for jobs, right? There are certified training. There is certified training on ecological growing or cultures, and that might be useful for many people to start a project in the primary sector. However, there are still difficulties. I'm talking about entrepreneurship. Well, many of these people have not even contemplated entrepreneurship. That's the way things are. It's just what it is. I would like to have a magic wand, but I don't have it. I do understand that good selection process, good communication, facilitation, and working on competences linked to entrepreneurship can be helpful. Now, we also should consider cooperative work, because that's going to help us support people, right? Otherwise, they're going to think, oh, you're giving me a chance, but then nothing happens. This is going to give them moral support, and it is going to help it help a project be stronger and more visible. So that's one way we should explore. And the third big challenge is synergies. Angeles talked recently about what we need to do or stop doing. Well, I come from employment, but in the face of depopulation, Jesus was talking about services and culture. We're talking about challenges that go way beyond employment. This is just how it is. And we're talking about alliances between the private and the public sector. Great. But there is a limit, right, between the vision that we have from one to another and other competent agents and agents who are interested and affected by this. I'm talking about trade unions. I'm talking about associations of bio farming, organic farming. I'm talking about housing. It's one thing to take a project to a rural area and another to enable the access of urban dwellers to rural areas. Well, this brings a new set of difficulties, one namely being housing and other services. I believe this is a much bigger challenge, and we would need to engage with a lot more agents. I'm talking about education, housing, tourism, and so on. There's one key point that I believe is essential: cultural. We're not going to go save people or save an area. They need to save themselves. We can support them, we can propose, but then we need to see who wants to participate and engage in these projects. And that's everything I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Thank you, Iñaki. Pilar mentioned he doesn't have a silver bullet. Maybe you do. What do you think? In any case, even if you don't, Iñaki talked about synergies and how important they are to solve challenges. So what challenges do you see in order to scale one of these initiatives, and given these best practices, interesting practices that you've seen in your first question, and then what solutions could we start to work on to solve them? Well, when you want to solve something, the best way would be to profile the problem and how many people are affected, meaning how many people want to solve this. Let me tell you, we have a lot at stake in Asturias. We're talking about 1 million inhabitants, 800,000 live around 6 cities, downtown, but we all come from a very smart space that solved a lot of problems called Lea. So We are working, the Demographic Challenge Commission, Rural Area Employment, Healthcare, we are all striving to make the little town economically feasible, because that's where they have the knowledge and they need to convey the knowledge. That's one difficulty. So there are lots of straitjackets in Asturias and Spain about learning, meaning if you want people to work on knives or make cheese or be a shepherd, that's land that we have and it's really important, right? Well, how do we teach those jobs? Going back to what I said earlier regarding the peers, how can we fund this? There must be people who are paid to share their knowledge, share it with younger people who would want to live and work, because we need them to live and work. Of course, they can work remote, but we want them to live there. Anyway, this clashes with what Iñaki said regarding the certificates. It's just impossible. How can we organize that? I understand that you know what I'm talking about. And we need to solve that. Now it seems generation MRR is opening up to non-formal training, etc. We're going to use that result. And then we have 11 rural development groups working across 71 city councils. There's 78 of us, right? But there's only 7 left. The others are urban. So we need this network to continue over time, because they have the contacts in the land. And I'm trying to liaise here these 2 points. How can we create these conditions of trust and so on? And then as an administration, we think that the rural ticket is working very well for us. The last call was financed with 9 million euros, 370 initiatives. Out of that 370, 213 are led by women. It is important to sustain these initiatives over time. We've supported them over 3 years. We used to give the funding at the end, but now we believe the funding needs to be given at the beginning. Now, this rural ticket would be the tool. In order to talk about this today, I talked to the rural team yesterday, because this goes beyond our responsibilities. I'm not going to solve it in the employment office or social services on their own, or healthcare. No, we need to work together. We need everybody to work on this. We need to take into account the training that they need. They shouldn't wait for a call from us, wait for 15 more people to do the training. So we need to break with that. However, if we have a strategy, we can work on this. And the strategy is the idea 2.0, Town 2.0 initiative. And we have 2 pilots, one in Moal, in the southwest of Asturias, and another one in Ciego, in the Picos Europa mountains, around people who make cheese and so on. Well, this was initially linked to rural tourism, which we believe is really important, yes, But in order to make towns feasible, going back to what we said earlier, we need many initiatives, support, etc. I think this is an entirely new conversation. I believe we all think similarly, but then what policies should we boost is different. Now, going back to the beginning and how this needs to stay over time, don't think this is just a short-term project. That's impossible. Thank you very much, Pilar. And I would like to thank everyone as well. We could continue with this discussion forever, but we're going to take it offline. We're going to have a networking session over a cocktail. By way of summary, I would say that moving from storytelling to story doing is what is left. And this is how, well, we should work on measures that support social innovation and best practices in other countries. And as we've talked in another roundtable, we need to get closer to that silver bullet. I'm sure there's no magic, but I'm sure also that we will be able to contribute something. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. We can see that these projects can be replicated in Spain. This puts an end to the round tables. We're going to move on to the networking session. You're all invited to it. Also, we would like to thank you for attending this event, and we would like to thank everyone who followed us live through our website. We hope that this Congress has kindled an interest after listening to the thoughts and shared today, ideas to support the rural Spain that doesn't want to die, but rather wants to show their full potential. Thank you very much.